You don't have to know what you're doing with your life right now. That pressure you feel, that low hum of anxiety that whispers you should have figured it out by now, it's not telling you the truth. It's just noise, cultural noise, the kind that gets louder when you're still and everyone else seems to be moving. There are people around you who appear certain. They talk about their 5-year plans, their clear direction, their sense of purpose. They seem to wake up knowing exactly what they're building toward, and you wonder what's wrong with you that you don't have that. You wonder if you missed something, some crucial moment when everyone else received instructions and you were looking the other way. But certainty, real certainty, is rarer than it looks from the outside. Most people are just better at performing it. They've learned to speak confidently about paths they're actually feeling their way along in the dark. They've decided that sounding sure is more acceptable than admitting they're improvising, so they commit to the performance, and from a distance it looks like clarity. You're watching people make decisions with conviction, and you're trying to figure out how they know, how they're so sure this job is the right one, this city is the right one, this relationship is worth all the compromise it requires. And the answer, usually, is that they don't know. They're just choosing, because choosing feels better than floating, because the world rewards action over stillness, because staying in the question too long makes other people uncomfortable. The discomfort you feel when someone asks what you're doing with your life, where you see yourself going, what your plan is, that discomfort isn't coming from within you. It's coming from the expectation that you're supposed to have an answer, a neat one that sounds ambitious enough to be impressive, but realistic enough to be believable. And when you don't have that answer ready, when you stumble or deflect, or say you're figuring it out, you can feel the air change, the subtle disappointment, the concern that maybe you're lost. But you're not lost. You're just here, in the part of life that doesn't have a clear narrative yet, the part that doesn't fit neatly into an elevator pitch or a social media bio. You're in the space between things, and that space is real. It's valid. It's where a lot of life actually happens when you're not trying to package it for other people's comfort. The idea that you need to have it all mapped out, that clarity is the goal and confusion is the problem, it's such a particular way of thinking. It assumes life is linear, that you're supposed to know the destination before you start walking, that the point is to arrive somewhere specific rather than just to keep living. And maybe that works for some people, or maybe it just looks like it works because that's the story we're all taught to tell. You might spend hours sometimes just thinking in circles, trying to figure out what you want, who you're supposed to be, what decision would finally make everything fall into place. You scroll through other people's lives and they seem so sorted, so intentional, like they woke up one day and knew exactly what mattered to them and then built everything around that knowledge. And you're still sitting there with a dozen half-formed ideas and no conviction about any of them. The comparison is exhausting. It makes you feel like you're falling behind in a race you didn't know you were running, like there's a right way to do this and you're not doing it. But the race is mostly imaginary. The timeline is mostly invented. The idea that there's a correct order to life, that you're supposed to hit certain markers by certain ages, it's cultural mythology, and it's caused more suffering than it prevented. You can be 30, 40, 50, and still not know what you're doing. You can have a career and a home and a relationship and still feel like you're making it up as you go along. Age doesn't automatically confer certainty. Experience doesn't always lead to clarity. Sometimes you just accumulate more years and more information, and you're still standing in the same fundamental uncertainty about what it all means and where you're headed. The pressure to know creates this constant background tension, this feeling that you're supposed to be working towards something, optimizing for something, building towards some future version of yourself who has it all together. And that future version is always just out of reach, always requiring one more decision, one more achievement, one more breakthrough before you're allowed to relax into your life. But what if you're allowed to relax now? What if not knowing is an acceptable place to be? Not a problem to solve, but just a state to inhabit. What if you can feel okay without having figured anything out? There's this strange guilt that comes with feeling peaceful when your life doesn't look impressive on paper, like you're only allowed to be content if you've earned it through accomplishment, through having arrived somewhere notable. You see people who seem stressed and busy and important, and you wonder if your own stillness means you're not trying hard enough, not ambitious enough, not engaged enough with the world.
But stillness isn't the same as stagnation. Not having a clear plan isn't the same as not having a life. You're living right now, today, in this moment that doesn't need to be justified or explained or directed toward anything in particular. You're here, you're breathing, you're moving through your days, and that's already everything, even if it doesn't feel like enough when you compare it to other people's highlight reels. The people who seem to have it all figured out, they're dealing with their own uncertainty, their own doubt, their own moments of lying awake wondering if they're on the right path. They've just chosen to move forward anyway, or they've gotten better at hiding the confusion, or they've convinced themselves that momentum is the same as clarity. You don't have to convince yourself of anything. You don't have to pretend you're more sure than you are. You can just be in this, in the not knowing, in the space between who you were and who you might become. And you can be there without apologizing for it, without rushing through it, without treating it like a phase you need to overcome as quickly as possible. The anxiety about not knowing what comes next, it's so common, it's almost universal, but everyone thinks they're the only one feeling it. Everyone thinks everyone else has it together, has a plan, knows where they're going, and so everyone performs certainty while privately feeling uncertain. And the gap between the performance and the reality just makes the anxiety worse. You're allowed to be uncertain. You're allowed to not have a clear vision. You're allowed to be figuring it out as you go, making small decisions without knowing how they fit into some larger narrative, trying things and changing your mind, staying in places longer than you thought you would, or leaving sooner than anyone expected. The idea that clarity comes first and then peace follows, it's backwards most of the time. Peace isn't a reward for having figured everything out. It's not something you earn through resolution. It's something you allow yourself to feel even in the middle of uncertainty, even when nothing is clear, even when you don't know what you're doing. You can wake up tomorrow and still not know what you want to do with your life, and that's fine. You can go through entire weeks, months, years without a clear sense of direction, and you're still living a real life, a valid life, a life that counts. The meaning doesn't only come from the destination. Most of it comes from the days themselves, from the small moments that don't add up to anything in particular, but that make up the texture of your experience. There are seasons of life that are about doing, about building, about moving towards something, and there are seasons that are about being, about pausing, about letting things settle without trying to force them into shape. You might be in one of those seasons right now, and if you are, fighting it doesn't help. Trying to manufacture clarity when clarity isn't ready to come just creates more tension. The culturally acceptable response to uncertainty is to make a plan, to set a goal, to take action, do something, anything. Just don't sit in the discomfort of not knowing. But sometimes the most honest thing you can do is admit that you don't know yet, that you're not ready to decide yet, that you're still in the process of understanding what you actually want, as opposed to what you think you should want.
Other people's timelines have nothing to do with yours. Their clarity has nothing to do with your confusion. Their decisions don't make your indecision wrong. You're on your own path, your own timeline, and it's going to look different from everyone else's because you're different from everyone else. You might feel like you're wasting time by not knowing, like every day that passes without a clear direction is a day lost. But you're not losing anything. You're living, you're experiencing, you're learning things about yourself that you can only learn by being in this uncertain space. The time isn't wasted just because it doesn't produce a clear outcome. The stories people tell about their lives, the neat narratives about how they found their passion or their purpose or their path, those stories are almost always reconstructed after the fact. In the moment, while it was happening, it was messy and unclear and full of doubt. But once it's over, once they've arrived somewhere they can point to, they go back and make it sound inevitable, like they knew all along. And that retroactive clarity makes everyone else feel like they're supposed to have it in real time, which is impossible. You're not supposed to know. You're just supposed to keep going, keep paying attention, keep being honest with yourself about what feels right and what doesn't. And sometimes nothing feels particularly right. And that's also information. That's also part of the process. The guilt about feeling calm without having achieved clarity, it's based on the assumption that you need a reason to feel okay, that peace is contingent on having your life sorted out in some visible way. But peace doesn't work like that. It's not a prize, it's not something you have to qualify for, it's something that's available to you right now, in this moment, regardless of whether you know what you're doing with your life. You can feel stable without having answers. You can feel grounded without having a plan. The steadiness you're looking for, it doesn't come from knowing the future. It comes from being present in the now, from accepting where you are instead of constantly trying to be somewhere else. The pressure will still be there sometimes. The feeling that you should have it figured out by now, that you're running out of time, that everyone else is ahead of you. But pressure is just pressure. It's not truth, it's not a reflection of reality, it's just the weight of expectations, cultural and personal, and you can feel it without letting it dictate how you live. You don't need to have a good answer when people ask what you're doing with your life. You don't need to sound certain or ambitious or like you have a 5-year plan. You can just say you're figuring it out. You're taking it as it comes. You're not sure yet. And if that makes them uncomfortable, that's their discomfort to sit with, not yours to manage. The uncertainty isn't a problem to fix. It's not a gap in your life that needs to be filled with answers and plans and decisions. It's just where you are right now. And where you are right now is a legitimate place to be. You're allowed to be here. You're allowed to stay here as long as you need to. You're allowed to not know and to be okay anyway.